Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and to be sharing some of the recent regulatory changes in Mexico. My name is Paulo Sanchez. I've been working in the conformity assessment field for about 10 years. I spent 6 years working for a certification body in Mexico. I started my career with ANSE. Then I moved to CSA, and now I'm a senior project manager for GMA programs. I've been working on some initiatives and strategies for Mexico, Central, and South America, as well as working for some other implementations in some other programs. Um, as I mentioned, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the changes that are happening now in Mexico that I think it's going to be of your interest. Um, some of the relevant changes that are happening now in Mexico are impacting directly the operation of some global manufacturers. So I will. It's going to be very hard to cover all the changes and to get into the weeds during the presentation, but I will do my best to explain as much as possible what are going to be the implications and some information that probably you should get into consideration before sending your products to Mexico when you are applying for a certification, so that you can get ready for uh, gaining market access for Mexico. Now I'm gonna be sharing my screen, and hope you all can see. Okay, this is the presentation, and this is the agenda that we're gonna go through this presentation. We have the general overview about all these changes. Basically, this is going to be a summary. I'm sure that most of you are very familiar with these changes. I'm not going to be talking in detail about what happened during the 2019 because I think that most of these changes were already covered in some of the presentations from the last symposium. I'm going to be more focused on the new changes. However, some of these changes are linked to these new changes. Um, so in the first slides, I'm going to have just like a quick summary about all the changes in Mexico. Then we're going to see where some of the regulatory changes, where the norms are, the new version of the norms that were already published, and some of the projects of norm that probably will be happening at the end of this year or probably early next year. Uh, some of the legal framework, what is happening in Mexico. I'm sure that you have heard about all these changes in the law. Um, and I have to say that a change in the law basically is trying to restructure the conformity assessment process in Mexico, the way that we are working or the way that we were working, and all these new implementations were going to be the improvements that the Mexican government is trying to conduct. And we're going to have a quick session for Q&A. So I know that for this case, it's going to be a little bit challenging, but in case of any question, I'm going to give you my contact details at the end of the presentation, or you can also shoot any of your questions to the organization committee, and they can forward all those questions to me, and I can get back to you. So as a quick summary of this presentation is what happened in Mexico during 2019 and what is happening in Mexico now. So let's start with what is happening now. Uh, the changes in the Mexican regulatory framework is basically the changes in the league. The former law is the Federal Law on Metrology and Standardization. However, now the law that was published is the quality infrastructure law. So now everything is going to be according to the quality infrastructure law, and the rule book it's pending to be published. Uh, there has been some changes in the annex of norms. It is called as the clause 2.4.1, and some of the recent changes are related to the commercial information of the products. What is commercial information? Commercial information is everything that is going to be regulating the part of the packaging, warranty, product label. So all the information that is going to be available for the consumer, so that they can take a better decision at the moment of the purchase. All the information that is going to be printed on the product does not have to mislead the customer. So basically, all this information is going to be regulated. It's important to mention that this is not a new norm. The norm already existed. However, it was considered as a voluntary one. Everyone had to comply with this regulation, but let's say that the controls to verify the fulfillment of this regulation were not really in place. So now the government is going to be basically making sure that all the products are imported in Mexico complies with these commercial information requirements. The equivalency agreement, well, there is a lot that I can say in terms of the equivalency agreement. Basically, equivalency agreement, we're going to see in the next slides, was basically focused on three different standards. Now, since some of those standards have been updated, this equivalency agreement have to be updated as well. So at this moment, one of the standards that was part of this agreement was already published, the new version. So the agreement hasn't been published, the agreement hasn't been revised. So it means that at this moment, the option for that standard is not available. So the only option that we have is to send samples or to work with some strategic partners that I'm going to talk in detail in the next slides. So basically, the important point here for the equivalency agreement is that we need to see if the version of the standard is changing. Basically, the equivalency agreement has to be updated as well. But this equivalency agreement is linked to the changes in the regulatory and legal framework in Mexico. Why? Because the league is considering also this equivalency agreement as part of the quality infrastructure law, and they are looking for some specific conditions so that we can operate under the equivalency agreement. And I'm going to talk in detail later, but it's important to take this into account, to bear that in mind. As you already know, this happened in 2019, that all NOM certificates or compliance documents shall indicate the HS code. Basically, it's just to have a traceability in the system. The HS code that is declared to the certification body is the same HS code that is going to be declared at customs. Why? Because before, probably the customer were declaring an HS code to the certification body, but the custom broker probably was declaring a different HS code because of the payment of taxes and duties. So now the government wants to make sure that there is a traceability in the system, and they are not changing information for the benefit of the importer. So if you are declaring an HS code with the certification body, that is the same HS code that you will be using when importing the product. And this is linked because the certification body is going to be transmitting that information to the Mexican customs. So there's no way that basically information can be modified in the meantime. So the information will be sent directly from the certification body to the government, and then the government is going to be transmitting that information to customs. Some of the other changes is that products not covered under the scope of a NOM standard will require to obtain a technical resolution letter issued by TGN. This is something that we're gonna talk in detail. There are some products that are out of the scope. It could be that probably HS code is calling for compliance for the NOM 001. However, when you look at the scope of the standard, the product is let's say that standard is not applicable for the product. So the customer were wondering, so now what can I do? Okay, we're gonna see in detail. Basically, you're gonna be providing some supporting documents so that you can get this technical resolution later. And with that document, then you're gonna be able to import the product. Pieces part of components of the final product listing NOM certificate will be considered by the same certificate. Basically, if the certificate is listing that a specific product contains these components or accessories or parts, and those parts components are listed in the NOM certificate, then it will be considered as covered. Okay, not as certified, as covered. Goods cannot be imported without demonstrating compliance or exemptions. This is basically to highlight the part of the B2B. It was very resounded during the last year that some of the companies used to work in a business-to-business scheme, so to speak. They were not selling the product directly to, let's say, to the general public. They were selling just to the final users. So there were certain aspects that the government was not very comfortable with, and they decided to remove this scheme because probably the way that some companies used to work was not the most proper one. So basically, they remove the temptation from the companies to use this scheme, and basically everyone now needs to demonstrate compliance with the NOM, either by any of these options that we have here. Um, you can demonstrate compliance in Mexico by any of the options that I'm listing here. These ones are the most common ones and the ones that I have identified so far. I would say that most of the customers will be applying for any of these options. It could be either by a NOM certificate, through the equivalence agreement, through an HSE dictum, there is highly specialized equipment dictum, or by a technical resolution letter or technical justification letter. Basically, the NOM certificate is the most common option, and this is, I would say, like most of the customers are applying for this one. Um, it could be because they want to demonstrate compliance according to the local regulations in Mexico. They feel more comfortable knowing that their product meets the requirements that are established in Mexico. The second option is the equivalence agreement. Basically, when you have a certificate under the UL or CSA standard, you can leverage that certificate. It means that you're going to be presenting this certificate at customs, and you're going to get access to Mexico. I'm going to talk in detail about what is going to be the process that customers need to follow so that they can make use of this equivalency agreement. As I mentioned, this equivalency agreement is focused on 3 specific standards for AV, IT, and some office equipment. So we need to bear in mind that some of these standards are being updated in Mexico, so the agreements must be updated as well. Then the third option that we have here is the highly specialized equipment dictum. This equipment or this dictum is basically focused on products that are listed in the clause, or in the clause 1.2. Basically, the clause 1.2 of the NOM 019 establishes where the specifications that the product needs to contain so that it can be considered as highly specialized equipment. And one of those considerations is that the product is not sold to the general public. As I mentioned, probably, I think from now that I'm thinking, probably this could be the only exemption in terms of when the product is not sold directly to the product. This will be the only exemption that I have identified so far. Business to business is not longer available. However, this option is available, but it needs to be according to the clause 1.2 of the NOM 019. Customer is going to be providing some supporting documentation, technical information, brochures, photographs, basically technical information of the product. And they're going to be providing this evidence stating that this product is according to the clause 1.2. If there is the case, the certification body is going to be analyzing the information, and they will determine if HSE dictum is going to be applicable or not, or if the product must be certified. So the certification body is going to be confirming where is going to be the best approach and the best path forward. And the fourth option that we have is the technical resolution letter or the technical justification letter. A technical justification letter is basically the same as a technical resolution, where the product is not going to does not have to comply with the applicable NOM. It could be either because the product is out of the scope of the NOM standard. It could be the case, as I mentioned, where the HS code calls for compliance for a specific NOM standard. However, that standard, if we look at the scope of the standard, the product is out of that scope. So with some supporting evidence, again, that information is provided to the CB, they issue a letter, and then the customer needs to go to the DGN so that they can issue like the final approval to that product, and based on that document that they will be receiving from the government, they will be able to import the product. And that's basically those two options, that the NOM standard indicated in the HS code is not applicable to the product as well. It could be that if we are talking about a refrigerator and that it needs to comply with NOM 003, probably the HS code may call for a different NOM standard, NOM 001, that is for AV products. So in those cases, well, they need to apply and to get confirmation from the certification body and Mexican government. There are some extenuating circumstances, so to speak, very rare cases, but the option is there. So there could be different scenarios, but at the end of the day, the path forward is already established and already defined by either the certification body or the Mexican government. Now we're gonna move to the let's say to the main aspect or the main content of the presentation. I divided this in 4 different sections: the equivalency agreement, the NOM 001. This is basically the regulatory changes in Mexico, and the project of NOM 019. It's important to mention that this is not the final version. This is just the draft, and it was published for comments. So based on those comments, the government is going to be reviewing the information, and they will publish the final version. The third topic will be the quality infrastructure law, and the fourth one is some of the changes in the Annex 2.4.1, and better known as Annex of Norms. So in terms of the equivalency agreement, in Mexico, the most common ways to demonstrate compliance is to conduct in-country tests by any of the IMA accredited labs. To do it through an MOU, it means that foreign laboratories sign an agreement with either by a testing laboratory or a certification body in Mexico, and that agreement is submitted to the government. So once that agreement is approved by the government, by DGN, and it's important to mention, it should be approved by the government, in this case, DGN, plus the government office or the ministry that is the owner of the standard. So if we are talking about energy efficiency, we need to get the approval from DGN, plus CONUE, which is the owner of energy efficiency standard. So once we get the approval of this agreement, then the MOU can be operated. It means that the foreign laboratory is going to be testing the product according to the NOM or NMX standard, and the party in Mexico, CB, will be recognizing that report for NOM certification purposes. We do also have the option of CB scheme, but at this moment, it's important to mention that as Mexico, as representative of Mexico, there is just one certification body that is part of the CB scheme. So in a strict way, that would be the only certification body that may accept the IEC reports. However, since some of that IEC standards may contain the national deviations, we may consider that those IEC standards are meeting the NMX requirements. The equivalency agreement that we have now is to cover 3 different product categories, as I mentioned. Unfortunately, let's say that unfortunately for the people that was using the equivalency agreement, the NOM 001, the new version was already published. So the new version of this agreement is still on hold. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this is linked to what is happening with all the changes in the legal framework in Mexico with the leak, with the quality infrastructure law. The reason why is because in the quality infrastructure law, there are some conditions that are established for all these international agreements. So basically what the government is seeking for is for a reciprocity of these certificates. As you may be aware, the equivalence agreement nowadays basically is unilateral. It's just one-way agreement where Mexican government is recognizing the UL and CSA certificates for getting access to Mexico. Now the government is trying to implement that also NOM certificates may be accepted by its counterparts in United States and Canada. There are still some discussions between the Mexican government and the government of the United States and Canada. This has been a back and forth, and I'm not really sure about the status of this interaction and all these discussions. But at this moment, the information that we have is that this agreement is on hold. We've been working in a working group with the Mexican government to draft the new version of the equivalency agreement. However, at the last minute, it was decided to place this agreement on hold. which was very unfortunate. And now I would say that for all the products that needs to comply with the NOM standard, they can send samples to Mexico to any IMA accredited lab, or they can make use of the MOUs or agreements that any laboratory has approved by Mexican government. For the other two, the NOM 016 and NOM 019, these equivalence agreements are still in place and are still valid. Customer can still make good use of this agreement. However, we do expect that there are going to be some changes in these standards. As you may know, and as I just mentioned, the NOM 019 will be updated soon by early next year or by the end of this year. And this standard will be merged with the NOM 016. It means that we will have just two standards, the NOM 001 and the NOM 019. The NOM 019 is basically based on the 6950, the current version, but the new version will be calling for some other standards. So it will be considered some additional requirements. It's important to mention, and I know that some of you have this question, what is going to happen if I already have a certificate under 6950, but everyone is aware of this standard is not going to be valid as of December of this year. So it means that the new version, that is the 62368, will be basically the new version, the standard everyone needs to use. Okay, so for the equivalence agreement, talking specifically for the equivalence agreement, what it has been discussed with the government in these working groups is that we're going to be considering two options. To consider the standard that was taken as reference, or the NOM, as you may know, the NOM 019 is based on the 6950, so we're going to still consider the version of the 6950, and we're going to be adding also the 62368. So if you have a certificate on their 62368, this certificate will be useful to import your products into Mexico. And it's important to mention, this is an extra-official information. This is not confirmed by Mexican government yet, because as I just mentioned, all these new versions of the equivalence agreement are on hold, and this is this internal discussion that it will have with the government, with the United States and Canada. However, that was the proposed path forward for global manufacturers. Sorry, that was the proposed path forward for the Mexican government, so that we can support the foreign manufacturers. And yeah, I know it could be a little bit challenging, so we are trying to cover all these requirements. And of course, the idea is that we can meet each one of the requirements of the NOM 019, but making or trying to leverage on the information that manufacturers already have. This is the process when you're going to be applying for the equivalence agreement. Basically, CSA or any certification body that is working with this equivalence agreement will be asking you for. It's just the copy of the certificate, and they will be asking you for some to fill out some kind of layout. It's an Excel document where you're going to be listing your HS code, the brand, the model of the products, the holder of the certificate, etc. So once we receive that information from the customer, we're going to be preparing this documentation, and we're going to send it to DGM for review. If there are comments, then we're going to be working with the customer. And it's important to mention here, the HS code that we use in Mexico is with 8 digits. However, I know that in some other countries, the HS code could be for 10 digits. So it's very important that when you're filling out this information, you declare the HS code, the 8 digits that is going to be used for importing goods into Mexico. As I mentioned, the government is trying to make a traceability in the process, so that the HS code that you're going to be listing here is going to be the same one that is going to be declared when the customer is importing the goods. So in some cases, we receive information where the HS code does not match with the type of product that you want to import, or you are trying to import. So we're sending back the information to customers so that they can confirm what is the correct HS code. So HS code is going to be playing a key role in the certification process and also for the equivalence agreement. So once the information is accepted by DGN, they transmit this information to SAT, and SAT is the one that is in charge of customs. This is the government offices, the authority in Mexico in charge of the Mexican customs. And then they will be publishing that information in this website. Um, it's important to mention here that we do not receive any kind of confirmation from the government when they accept the information or when they publish the information in the website. There is no such document. Uh, Basically, what the government is asking us for is to keep an eye on the website to make sure that the information was published. In case it takes longer than expected, probably we can make a follow-up with the government. However, they do not issue any kind of confirmation of when the information was already published or not. So it's a little bit hard to know when the exactly information was published. But at this moment, we've been trying to make our best to basically to track all these publications. So we do normally keep you informed. Then we're gonna move to the new version of the NOM 001 and the project of the NOM 019. This is the structure of the NOM 001. I mean, in general terms. Basically, some of the changes that we're going to see in the structure of this NOM is that we're going to have 6 product categories plus 1. And the reason why I'm listing plus 1 is because all the products that are not into any of these 6 product categories, basically they will have to be assessed or evaluated according to this category that is miscellaneous or others. So the product categories that are listed in the NOM is the audio and video, UPS, external power supplies, toys, microwaves, amusement machines, and miscellaneous. The reason why I'm highlighting in red or making emphasis in the external power supplies is because, as probably some of you may be aware, in the previous version or previously, all the external power supplies were certified according to the NOM 019. But now they are moving this certification to the NOM 001. So basically, if you already have a certificate, the certificate will keep its validity. But it's very important that now all the if you're going to be applying for a new certificate, the external power supplies will be certified according to the NOM 001. Then in terms of the test standards, we have the NMX standards that are pretty much based on IEC. I would say that they are in line with IEC standards. Obviously, there are some national deviations that we should consider, but in general terms, the structure is basically lined up with IEC standards. The certification schemes, there are some changes in certification schemes. The most common one in Mexico is for 1 year. There are minor changes in that certification scheme, but we're going to see regarding the surveillance activities, but in general, it is the same. We have the option for 2 and 3 years validity, which basically the government is adding some additional requirements and more focus in terms of the production and the quality management system, the audit of this quality management system. And we do also have the option for batch scheme. This is like the breakdown of the NOM 001. We can see that according to the type of product is the NMX standard and the equivalent IEC standard. So basically this is just the confirmation what I just said, that most of the NMX standards are based on IEC. So you can take a look and you can look at the product that you're gonna be certifying, and you can identify the IEC standard as well as the NMX standard. Things to consider for the NOM 001 is that the validity of the reports for initial certification is for 90 days. And this is important because I know that for some other markets, you may use certificates that has 1 or 2 years validity. However, in Mexico, once you have a report, it cannot be older than 90 days. It is a common practice in Mexico that if the applicant, for some reason, they forgot, let's say they forgot to submit the application to a certification body and the test report is already older than 90 days, they should reconnect with the test lab and they should ask for a let's say they ask for an updated test report. Basically, they will be reissuing the test report, but just with a new date. Any of the content of the test report will be modified, just the date, so that they can continue with the process. There are some changes in surveillance, also in terms of the report. Once you receive the surveillance audit or the follow-up visit, you have 90 days to complete the process and to submit that report to a certification body. Another critical change is the surveillance. As I mentioned, there are some changes in this regard. We have two options for surveillance. Is that you can conduct the surveillance in the month 9 with full test, or this is the, let's say, the main change is that you can conduct 2 surveillance or 2 follow-up visits at the month 6 and at the month 10, and each one of them with partial test. So basically it is, if you want to do it one time with full test, it is for the option 1, or you can do it with partial test, but you will be receiving to audit. So it is up to the customer. Some changes in the PEC is the conformity assessment procedure. So there are some minor changes which are related to the certification schemes. Some changes in the family grouping criteria. We have a general family grouping criteria and some particular requirements according to the type of product. Basically, the requirements are pretty much the same. There are just some minor differences. The certification body mark is not mandatory. And it's important, in Mexico, the mark that is mandatory is the NOM mark. The reason why I'm doing emphasis on this is because I've heard from some customers that they need the certification body mark. No, the certification body mark is an option, and it could be just to provide let's say, more arguments for selling, or in case you want to demonstrate who was the certification body that certified the product. But in general, the mark that you have to place on the product is just the NOM mark. If you want to place the mark provided by the certification body, then you can do it. It is, at the end of the day, this is up to you. It's important to mention here that in some NOM standards now, they are requesting as mandatory to put the NOM mark on the product. Previously, the NOM mark was a right of the customer. Let's say that previously the customer was certifying a product and they had the right to decide if whether they want to put the NOM mark on the label or not, or on the product, whatever it is. Now, some of the NOM standards are calling for, as a mandatory requirement, to place the NOM mark on the product. So we need to be very careful. If the companies are already doing so, that's fine. But this is becoming a mandatory requirement in Mexico. And the common practice is that they place the NOM plus a certification body. But in case, because I know that some companies are very careful in terms of the space of the label and information that they're going to put on the product label. In some cases, they prefer to save some space for some other marks or some other instructions that they need to place, or symbols. So that's why I'm doing this verification. Also, some of the recommendations for the customers is when at some point, if you want to change from the certification body, if you only have the NOM mark on the product, it's gonna be very convenient for you because you don't need to change the design of the label because the NOM is already there. So basically, you can change from another certification body without modifying your label. So at the end of the day, this is basically it is up to the customer to decide what is the most convenient way for them to work with this. And also something very important here is that the exemption for products rated with 24 volts was withdrawn. So previously there was the exemption that if the product was rated with 24 volts or lower, they can be exempted. Now with all these changes in the annexes, and specifically in the annex of NOMs in the 2.4.1 that I mentioned at the beginning, this was one of the main changes in the last year, that all the products now needs to comply with NOM certificate. It doesn't, regardless of the if it is 24 volts or lower or not, you need to comply with the NOM standard. Now moving to the NOM 019, basically it has a similar structure to the NOM 001. Um, the status of this NOM standard, this project is still on hold. And as I've been mentioning, this is expected to be published by late 2020 or early 2021. It is still under, as far as I know, it's still under review, and not really sure if they're still open for comments, but let's say that it is almost in the last stage for publication. The evaluation of components may apply. Also, a requirement that we have in the NOM 019 in the current version is the clause 1.2, where they were stating under which conditions you can consider that a product is highly specialized. However, the procedure to apply for that compliance dictum was not duly defined, and it was not clearly defined in the standard. So now, basically, it is a specific appendix for the highly specialized equipment and how you can apply for this document and what is information that you need to consider. So I think this is providing more clarity in terms of the information and the process to get this document. And as I just mentioned, the NOM 016 was merged into this standard. So the office equipment plus the IT equipment will be considered in the same standard, and the NOM 016 basically will disappear. There are some changes in the family grouping criteria. The same, there are some general requirements and some particular requirements for a specific type of product. Some changes in the certification schemes, and something important that we're going to see later in the quality infrastructure law is that basically before there were too many criteria issued by different government offices, and there were some documents that everyone was taking into account, but at the end of the day, the information was spread a little bit. So now the government is trying to homologate the procedures, and each NOM standard will contain its NOM conformity assessment process, so that the information can be clear and easy to track. The same, the exemptions for products rated with 24 volts or lower will be withdrawn. And this standard makes reference to the NOM 024, the commercial information. This is one of the requirements that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Basically, the government is trying to make more emphasis in terms of the information that is provided to the consumers, and all the information that is declared on the product. So they just want to make sure that some minimum information is declared on the product label, users manuals, warranty, and that information is according to the requirements established by the government, so that they do not mislead the consumer, and they can take a better decision when they are purchasing a product. Now we're gonna move to the quality infrastructure law. It's important, something that I want to clarify. All these government offices or authorities that I'm listing here, it doesn't mean that those are the only ones that are part of the quality infrastructure, are part of the conformity assessment in Mexico. No, these ones, some of the key players that I have identified, but there are some other government offices and authorities that we should take into account. Basically, for energy efficiency, we're considering CONUE, for safety, DGN, the Economy Ministry. For IFT, this is not really an office that belongs to the government. It is an independent body, but it works very close with the government for the development of regulation, and in this case, its technical dispositions. As we may see, there are some NOM standards. There is a case of the NOM 208 that makes reference to some dispositions of the IFT. So basically, they coordinate all this work and they work very close. There is the authority of Profeco, market surveillance, that at this moment, with all the changes in the law, is going to be playing a key role in terms of market surveillance. They are, let's say, they're strengthening the part of the requirements to make sure that everyone is playing under the same rules, and basically they are laying the ground for all these conformity assessment activities. And we have the authority that is SAT, that is in charge of the custom clearance. Then we have the other parties, that is the certification body, testing labs. And an important change that that happened in Mexico with the quality infrastructure law is that previously all the people, all the units that were providing services to issue constancias, that's a word, or compliance letter in English, for the commercial information and some other activities. Now they are changing their names, and now they are not, they were known before as verification units. Now the verification activities will be part of the government, and these units are going to be known from now as inspection units. And also we have the part of IMA, which is the accreditation entity in Mexico, that is also going to be playing a key role. And something important that I'm going to be talking later is that IMA is working very close with the government to make sure that everyone is in line with the objectives and aims of the quality infrastructure law. Some of the important facts of this law, or some relevant information, is that this law was published in July 1st, and they were trying basically to work in parallel with the TMEC. So they were basically looking to publish the quality infrastructure law in the same date with when the TMEC became effective. The date to enter into force, it was August 30 of this year. Basically, it was 60 days after its publication in the official gazette, which is called DOF, DOF. The quality infrastructure law is replacing the existing federal law on metrology and standardization. However, the rule book of this new law, the LEAG, it's going to be published within the next 12 months. So let's say that by August 2020, the government should publish the rule book at latest. It could be before, or it could be at latest by August 2020. And it's important to mention, some people has asked me, what is going to happen in the meantime? What is the rule book that we're going to be using, or what is going to be, where can I find the specifics? So the government established that the rule book for the federal law of metrology standardization is still valid, and that there are some certain aspects that we should still consider, as long as they do not contradict anything that is established in the league. So basically, let's say that we're still in a transition period, so that all these implementations can be in place, so all the pieces can be in the right place. And this law is comprised of 165 articles and 15 transitories. And some of the aims of this quality infrastructure law is that basically the government is trying to streamline the process for standards development. They are opening the door to some other players so that they can also work on a specific role for standards development. They are they are trying to include some other parties, so that it could be transparency, not just in the standards development, but also in the general conformity assessment structure in Mexico. They are trying to reduce the use of the DOF for general notifications. Basically, they will be creating, and this is linked to the point number 6, they will be creating, they are trying to implement the use of digital platforms. So some of the information will be communicated through these platforms. And it's important that not just in terms of the regulatory changes or the new laws or criteria, but also some specific information, accreditations, the assessors, for example, that let's say the auditors from IMA, are going to be published in this platform. So at the end of the day, the auditors that are published in these platforms are the ones that are the only ones that can conduct audit activities. So also there's going to be some additional information that is going to be published that is about certification bodies, such as the fees. And this is going to be really great. Everyone is going to know what are the fees from each one. So basically you can, so that you can compare and you can see, okay, I know this is the fee that there is going to be for this certification body, but we have some other options. So basically, as I mentioned, the base of this is transparency and to strengthen the conformity assessment structure in Mexico. They are trying to harmonize with the Mexican law system. As I mentioned, the information was spread, and at some point, everyone had a different understanding in terms of the requirements or the line to follow. Now they are trying to harmonize the system and to bring everyone up to speed. Yeah, so to speak. So I think this is really great. It's going to be a little bit challenging at the beginning, and I'm sure there are still some moving pieces, but once all these changes are implemented, this is going to provide like more consistency to the scheme and also to the structure in Mexico. And I know that probably some people at the beginning is going to be struggling with some of the requirements and some of the changes, but believe me, this is for the good and in the best interest of the consumers, and not just of the final user. This is also in the best interest of the people that is going to be using the conformity assessment. Let's say for the companies that are going to be applying and asking for certification services, they're going to be the most they're going to be receiving the most of the benefits of all these changes. So um, the government is very supporting in this case in this regard. Um, this is related to the point number 4. There is focus on the final users of the system who's going to be asking for the certificate. Let's say that before the certification bodies and the accreditation entities had not say the total control, but they had a lot of power in terms of the decisions. Now the government is trying to include also the users of the system so they can provide feedback. If they do not feel comfortable with certain aspects, they can communicate that with the government and work everyone together so that we can find a common solution. So that is one of the aims. To regulate comprehensively, basically to set up the criteria. As I mentioned, all the PECs, the conformity assessment procedures, will be established in the NOM. So it could be easy to read and easy to find all the regulations and all the process to follow. At some point, it was very hard because the government issued a separate document for the certification or the conformity assessment procedure for the certification of certain products, because it was not included in the NOM. In the NOM, probably it was just establish the test method. So they are trying to make comprehensive documents that includes everything from end to end. And some of the relevant changes, there are some changes in terms of the definitions, as I mentioned, inspection units and verification units. Now, in Mexico, we call them NOM standards. And now there are some of the changes. The NOM standards, the name will be changed. And also it will be the change for the NMX standards also will be changed. Now we're going to see the regulations and standards, which is one of the main changes in this regulation in terms of the definitions. This is something that I just mentioned, the transparent operational resources, who's going to be operating, what is the structure they have. Actually, the certification bodies, when they are requesting the approval to the government to operate as a certification body, they need to provide basically like a business case. Where is going to be your structure, where are going to be your fees, so that they can start operating as certification body and as a testing laboratory or inspection unit. So I'm confident that this is going to provide a lot of clarity to the users of the system. The accreditation and approval process, as I just mentioned, there is some additional information that all the conformity assessment bodies needs to provide to the government. Before, probably it was just accreditation. Now we need to provide some additional information to make sure that the certification body and the laboratory has the proper resources in place to operate accordingly. Basically, in some cases, it was just to get the accreditation, and there were some moving pieces. Now, no, once the CB is up and running, that you can demonstrate that you have all the competency, the resources, infrastructure, so that you can operate as conformity assessment body in Mexico. For the standards development, as I mentioned, there are some changes. They will be called standards, and the PEC, the conformity assessment procedure, will be part of the NOM standards. For the international agreements, and now it is considered the mutual recognition agreements, the mutual recognition arrangements. We have also the equivalence agreements. So there are some specifics that were not included in the previous law, but now the government is adding more resources, so to speak, to the quality infrastructure law. There are some, as I mentioned, there are some moving pieces. There are no specifics so far in the quality infrastructure law. We should wait for the rule book so that we can know what is going to be the implementation, what is going to be the process to follow, what are going to be the requirements. So all those things that we need to take into consideration so that we can apply for the recognition or to submit a request to the Mexican government so that we can sign an agreement with a foreign laboratory. All those specifics are not clearly defined yet, but as of yet, but I'm sure that within the next months we'll hear from the government to see what is the intention and what is the direction of all these new requirements and figures that they are implementing. Self-declaration scheme, this is very important. Previously in Mexico, a self-declaration scheme was not really common, and it was, I would consider, it was not really considered as part of the conformity assessment. Now the government is providing this option to basically to the users of the system, so that they can also use this resource or tool for importing and marketing the product in Mexico. Obviously, this self-declaration will depend on the level of risk of the product and some other circumstances, or there will be some specifications that the government is going to make in the rule book. So now basically they're just giving us heads up about the new channels that you have and the new roads that we have to demonstrate compliance in Mexico. There are going to be some surveillance activities, not just to the conformity assessment bodies, but also to the accreditation bodies. This is, I would say, this is really great. That to make sure that everyone is operating in the proper way, and all the implementations are in place. And as I mentioned, the communication through the digital platform. Everyone basically is going to be getting access to this platform, so most of the information is going to be available there, and not just the information that we used to see before. We're going to see more information, and basically the government is trying to get into the weeds about how the certification bodies, testing laboratories, the conformity assessment bodies are operating, and the information that is going to be transmitted to the customers. So the specifics again about this technological platform hasn't been provided as of yet, but I'm sure in the next months we're going to hear from the government. And the last slide in terms of the changes in Mexico is the Annex of NOMS, the Annex 2.4.1. That is basically some of the HS codes were updated. There was a whole revision of the HS code database, and they just want to make sure that the HS code is calling for the specific or for the appropriate NOM standard. And also there were some HS code that were not calling for any NOM standard. So now all the changes is that the HS code calls for the applicable NOM standard. As I just mentioned, B2B is not longer available. For NOM 208 local importer, needs to be the holder of the certificate. I know that for the people that is familiar with this, previously they were the certificate was issued uh, to a different company, in some cases a manufacturer, and they were able to use that certificate to demonstrate compliance for importing goods. Now each local importer must hold a NOM 208 certificate so that they can import the product. And it was the same that the HS code. There are some HS code that are calling to the compliance of this NOM 208. Before it was, I would say, like, it was very hard that someone was uh, basically demonstrating compliance with the NOM 208 at the point of entry in the country, because there were some HS code that were not calling for compliance to the NOM 08. There were probably just a couple. So now, as I mentioned, the database was updated, and now they are calling to the compliance of this NOM standard. The commercial information it is now mandatory, and there are a lot of mechanisms that the government is going to be implementing to make sure that everyone is going to be meeting this information. Basically, I would say, like, for the people that is attending this session, the NOM 024, it's going to be the NOM standard you will have to be looking at. And I do recommend you to look at the requirements for product label warranty, specifically to see there are some certain statements that you cannot make in your warranty. So it's very important that you be aware of, and in case you have one of those statements, probably the wording is not correct. So just trying to make the proper adjustments so that you avoid any inconvenience when, and probably not just for importing, also when you are marketing the product in Mexico. The components, some components may require NOM certificate, and the NOM certificate, what I just mentioned, that the HS code must be listed in the NOM certificate, and some of the components can, if those are already listed in NOM certificate, are already covered. I just want to make another remark, and something that I know that I already mentioned, but it's very important, is the HS code at this moment is playing a key role in the certification process from end to end, basically. From the beginning, because you're going to be declaring that information to the certification body. If you don't provide this HS code, the certification body is not going to be issuing the certificate. And at the end of the process, because that's the HS code that you will be using for importing the goods into Mexico. So basically, the HS code is going to be playing a key role in your certification process. So I hope you have find this session fruitful and useful. And I know for the question, you can send me an email. Here is my contact information. And in case of any specific information for any current project that you have, or if you are facing any challenge for importing the goods, or probably the interpretation that you're having in terms of the law or any regulatory changes, or if probably you have read the draft of the new NOM 019 and something is not very clear, you can just send me an email, and I will be very glad to support you. That's part of the intentions that and some of the changes in Mexico, that everyone can be on the same page, and basically that everyone is getting the right benefits that the government is trying to implement. So I do appreciate your participation, and basically, if you have, as I mentioned, if you have any doubt or any question, you can just I'm just trying to, you can just let me know. You can basically send me an email, and I will be very happy to support you with. Once again, thanks so much for joining this session. And the information is gonna keep changing for sure, but at least I just try to make a quick summary of all the changes that probably you will face in the near future. So have a good day.